Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in. But before I begin this episode, I would like to give some content warnings for abortions, poisoning of a spouse, homophobia, and suicide. Hello, hello, hello. Today we are talking about Miss Gloria Swanson. She is one of the most successful actresses from old Hollywood who made a successful transition from the silent film era into what they would refer to in those days as talkies. Gloria Swanson was infamous not just for what she did in front of the camera, but for her spicy personal life, we'll say. So, Swanson was married 6 times in her lifetime. She biologically had 2 children and 1 adopted son. And she had some salacious affairs in between the marriages and during the marriages. So we are going to talk about it, okay? But I can't cover it all because we'd be here all day, okay? So this is just a snippet of Gloria's, actually a little bit more than a snippet of her scandalous love life. Hello, my name is Tamika, and whether you stumbled upon Junkie for a Story or are here by intention, thank you for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if so, please give it a like and subscribe at the end. And don't forget to hit the bell for notifications so you won't miss out whenever I release new videos. Also, there will be a link in the description for the 2 books I referenced in this video. The first is Swanson on Swanson, her autobiography by Gloria Swanson. The second is Gloria Swanson, The Ultimate Star by Stephen Michael Scherer. If you want more information about either books, you know what to do. And now, back to the video. So, just to give you a brief bio of the star, Gloria May Josephine Swanson was born on March 27, 1899 in Chicago, Illinois, the only child of Adelaide and Joseph Theodore Swanson. During his time in the U.S. Army, her father moved the family frequently. Gloria spent most of her formative years in Chicago, Illinois, and Puerto Rico, where she saw her first motion picture. Her mother separated from her father when Gloria was a teenager. Then they moved to California so Gloria could pursue an acting career. And her career in Hollywood took off instantly. She was a natural talent, and she also truly did enjoy acting. And I think that was the main part of her charm that audiences were enchanted by. One of her mentors was the famed and revered director-producer Cecil B. DeMille. Some of her notable film credits are Sadie Thompson from 1928, Indiscreet from 1931, and Sunset Boulevard, of course, from 1950. She has been nominated for an Oscar for Sadie Thompson, The Trespasser, and she won a Golden Globe for Best Actress for her performance in Sunset Boulevard. She even did some TV roles in her later years. She appeared on Burke's Law, where she was nominated for a Golden Globe. And she also appeared on Broadway as well. So she was an all-around TV, stage, and film actress. But now let's get to what you're really here for. All right, so husband number 1. Let me tell you about him. So she met Wallace Berry, who was good looking and 20 years her senior, but charismatic and had a way of collecting young gals. She met him when she was 17 years old, and he was twice her age. Berry saw something in Miss Swanson, and he proposed swiftly, okay? He wanted to snatch her up, get her off the market quick, okay? And Gloria, didn't have much experience with men at this point. I mean, again, she was 17. And so, I mean, I guess good looks and charm was enough for the young girl, you know? So she said yes to the proposal. And first they were going to marry in Santa Barbara. But Gloria didn't have proof of age since she wasn't of age. So then they went back home to get Gloria's mom, who would give consent so that they could marry in Pasadena. So they brought their mom along and they went to obtain a marriage license in Pasadena. And yeah, they were married. Just like that. Just like that. And then Gloria shortly learned of Wally's philandering ways. It turns out Wally was a drunk, a gambler, and a philanderer. So he was always in need of money, always inebriated, and not much of a husband to Gloria. But she tried to stick to her vows and be the docile wife and just make it work. So one day she learned that she was pregnant. And obviously she was excited. This would be her first child. So she, of course, told her husband, and he appeared equally excited. But then one morning, she was experiencing stomach pains. Now, before I tell you what happened with the pregnancy, let me back up and explain just how tumultuous this marriage was. Early into the marriage, well, first, both Gloria Swanson and Wally Berry worked for Cecil B. DeMille at this point, and they were sometimes in films together, sometimes not, but Gloria's career was more auspicious than Berry's. He would get smaller parts usually. And so she was the breadwinner in their household. So shortly after they got married, Berry began picking up his wife's checks for her. Not just picking up her checks. Now, again, this is, the 1910s. So obviously we're talking paper checks, right? And because of the inequality that women endured in those days, the people at the studios saw no reason to not hand over Swanson's checks to her husband. So he would pick up the checks and gamble or drink the money away. And obviously this infuriated Gloria Swanson because she was very much responsible with her money prior to marrying Berry. So there's that issue. And then there is the issue of Berry getting fired. So one day he came home despondent and looking pitiful, but he didn't want to talk about it. So the next day Gloria went into work and she found out through the rumor mill that he was fired. Mac Sennett is the one who fired Wallace Berry. And so Gloria went to Clarence Badger, another important figure at the studios, to inquire about the firing. But Badger didn't know the situation either. Long story short, Gloria went to bat for her husband and demanded that they hire him back if they wanted to continue a working relationship with Gloria Swanson. And she knew that she had the clout to make these demands because the studio did not want to lose Gloria Swanson. So they ended up hiring him back and complying with her demands. But as soon as she left the studio, guess who she saw parked in his car with another woman? Okay, so this is who we're talking about. Now, back to the pregnancy and the morning sickness. She told her husband, who said, okay, I'll be right back. Let me get something for you. He went out. He came back with a bottle of pills. He handed her 5 pills and told her to take them. She didn't question it. She took the pills with some water. And then what she remembered next was that she woke up in a hospital to the nurse telling her that her baby was aborted. That's right. Her own husband poisoned her to have an abortion without his wife's consent. And she could have died from that too. I mean, he didn't even consider whether that dosage would have killed his wife. After Gloria found out what happened, she was devastated and she knew she couldn't trust her husband anymore. But she continued to live with him. At this time, they were living together with his mom as well. And I think that may have been the reason why he wanted to have the baby aborted. Because if Gloria were to go forward with the pregnancy, eventually she would have to stop working and, be on bed rest for a while until it was time to have the baby. And that meant Wallace, good old Wally, would have had to provide for his family, which we know that wasn't quite the man that he was, okay? So I think that's why he did marry Gloria Swanson. I mean, she was young, naive, but she also was talented. So he could see that she was climbing to the top in Hollywood because of her talent. And so she could provide him a comfortable lifestyle. She was making the money, he was spending the money. Easy enough arrangement. Why ruin things? So, yeah. After that, Gloria said, she was plotting to divorce Barry. For whatever reason, she was waiting. She was waiting for the right time. Wally did not make things easy for her. He did not make things easy for her. So then, when she did separate from Wallace Berry, she dated here and there, but again, this is old Hollywood, so we're talking the 1920s. I'm sorry. Actually, she married Wallace on her 17th birthday, which was March 27th, 1916. So we haven't even entered the 20s yet. So in those days, it was frowned upon. First of all, abortions were frowned upon and also illegal. But also divorces were frowned upon and extramarital affairs. But people were more harsh against women who were committing adultery than they were men. Men were viewed more leniently, we'll say. So then Gloria, she goes out with some friends one day, out to dinner, and she meets a Pasadena millionaire by the name of Herbert K. Sanborn. He was at the time the president of Equity Pictures Corporation and later owned the Brown Derby restaurant. He also was the brains behind getting sponsors to fund film projects. Okay, so before I tell you about Herbert, let me back up a bit. So there was this director who Swanson had a little crush on. His name was Jack Conway. And he had a conversation with her about affairs with married men and scandals, tarnishing her name and potentially ending her career in Hollywood. He sensitively told her that they could not be together, for they both were married and separated from their spouses, and it would not go over well with the public. Now, he didn't have to do that, but I guess he noticed that Miss Swanson, had some romantic ideas in mind, and he just wanted to keep things in check and let her know this is going to remain professional, okay? I can't go ruining my career for some woman, and you should be with the same mindset. Now, there were some rumors that Swanson was one of Cecil B. DeMille's harems, as they called them. The papers loved to sensationalize DeMille's relationships with his female protégés. But when you read Swanson on Swanson, you can hear her adoration for her mentor, but it does not sound like it crossed the amorous line. Even his wife, Constance Adams DeMille, did not believe those reports. Okay, so now back to Herbert. Herbert meets her in a restaurant and he introduces himself to her. He seems to set his mark on her, okay? I mean, he's really, I would say, sort of aggressively pursuing her. And so after meeting her in the restaurant, he asked her out on a date because, at that point she was with friends. So he asked her out on a date where they can have a more intimate conversation. And so they go out to dinner alone a few days later after the first meeting. And after a few days, he proposes marriage. But he tells her, don't give me an answer until I come back from New York. Now, mind you, when Herbert Sanborn was pursuing Gloria, she had not a serious romance, but she had a romance with another Pasadena millionaire by the name of Richard Craney Gartz. Now, he was an intellectual snob and heir to the Crane plumbing fortune. He introduced her to fine literature and conversely seized every opportunity to boast of his radical socialist views, heavily influenced by Marxism. They began dating, though he made it clear that he did not want to marry nor have kids. By Gloria's account, he wanted her to be his kept woman and he would spoil her with his fortune, but he was clear there would be no marital promises. So for that reason, they were never exclusive to one another. Keep in mind, Swanson was still separated and not yet divorced from Barry. So then, when Sanborn proposed to her, she being someone with traditional desires, I think she always knew she would not get serious with Crane because he was not marriage material. So there was no future there. So when Sanborn came back from his trip, she said yes to the marriage proposal. And they got married on December 20th, 1919, in a private ceremony. She loved how he showered her with gifts, and their days following their wedding day were filled with love, joy, and romantic gestures. So then, one day, Sanborn left for business, so he told her. And then she found out that the hotel they were staying in wasn't being paid for. He was running up unpaid bills, and the jewelry he gifted her was not even paid for. So she ended up having to pay the hotel bill and pay for the jewelry. And then she had to move them into a more affordable hotel. This she did while he was gone. So on paper, Sanborn was a millionaire, on paper. He was said to be a millionaire. His investments and film projects were looking bleak, so his finances were in need of a revival, we'll say. When he returned from New York, he asked to see her contract and became furious at how beneficial it was to the studio. Financially beneficial, I should say. He was baffled by what they were paying Gloria Swanson, knowing what the studio was earning from her films. So he had a lawyer write a letter giving their expert opinion of the contract she had with Cecil B. DeMille. So again, I've seen a theme here with these men. I mean, in those days, that's what women did. They got married for protection, and because women pursuing their own careers just wasn't common in those days. But when it came to the men who went after Gloria, it looks like they did see her as more affluent than she probably was. So it sounds like Sanborn made the same mistake. He was thinking she had all this money, and maybe because he was in the red, he figured he could marry Swanson and, things will switch over to green for him, But once he saw that contract, he was like, okay, she's just in need of some extra finances as much as I am, The marriage was on rocky ground, okay? But then Gloria Swanson became pregnant with her husband's baby. And unlike Barry, this husband, he gets kudos for not poisoning his wife. I mean, we're going to set the bar real low. Kudos for not giving his wife pills. So, yeah, she finds out that she's pregnant. But then, because he realized that her finances were no better than his, he up and deserted her. He just left. She didn't know where he was. She couldn't get in touch with him. He just up and abandoned her. Swanson being one of the biggest stars in Hollywood at that time, he probably was under the impression that he could control her finances and career. But she was more of, an autonomous thinking woman when it came to her career. And she just wasn't the type of woman who would let a man control and steer her career without her input. She was very driven and ambitious. And maybe that is why she married so many times, because I don't think men were used to that in those days, especially in those days. So on March 15th, 1921, they separated. Then she met director Mickey Nealon at a social event. And once again, he began pursuing her whilst he was still married to actress Gertrude Van Brick. Now, Mickey did have a drinking problem. And after one too many explosive arguments, he threatened to commit suicide. That's when Gloria fortified his plans to marry actress Blanche Sweet, which he did. And then he split from Sweet after 2 months. But all the while, he and Gloria never stopped seeing each other. Now, around this time, there was a famous comedian by the name of Fatty Arbuckle who was on trial for killing a woman. And that's when motion pictures became morally strict about their stars' personal lives. So Swanson had to be discreet with the extramarital affairs she had after separating from Sanborn, who was not granting her a divorce so easily. Will Hayes became president of Motion Pictures Producers and Distributors of America in March of 1922 and ruled over the decency of Hollywood and its stars with an iron fist. Now, Mickey Nealon believed that Swanson's second husband, Sanborn, was stalling with the divorce to avoid the draft because married men his age did not have to serve in the war. So Nealon told her that Sanborn would probably grant her a divorce once the war was over. So while Gloria Swanson was carrying on and having a good time with other men, Sanborn finally filed for divorce in February of 1923 on the grounds of her adultery. And this was quite the salacious divorce proceedings, okay? So let me tell you, Sanborn didn't just file for divorce, okay? He filed for divorce and alleged that Miss Gloria Swanson was having affairs with multiple men, okay? He listed 14 men specifically, okay? Like, he got down to the nitty-gritty of it. And yes, he gave up names of people he alleged Gloria was having affairs with. Now, most of them, it seems kind of bogus, and most of them were in Hollywood, you know, directors, actors, Hollywood people. But his strategy was to force Gloria into agreeing to his terms of divorce, because he knew if he listed these very powerful men, they would not want to get involved in divorce proceedings and just be put out in the papers and everybody be in their business. So he knew that those men would pressure Gloria Swanson to give in to whatever demands Sanborn made and just agree to his terms and get divorced. You know, let's just get this over with, so people don't have to go to court and testify and everybody's business is put out there in the streets. He knew he put her in a tough spot. But he wasn't the only one who was taking advantage of the situation. Mr. Cecil B. DeMille also seized this opportunity to get Swanson to sign a contract that had a moral clause in it, so that if she was ever caught misbehaving, there would be fines and penalties. And once again, Cecil B. DeMille would be stacking his pockets while emptying hers. After talking it over with her father, Gloria Swanson agreed with her father, who said, hey, as long as the children are taken care of, then that's all that matters, you know. Don't drag this out. So she acquiesced to Sanborn's demands out of fear that the scandalous divorce proceedings could ruin her career and possibly others. Around this time, the studio even assigned her a chaperone. Gave her a chaperone to prevent any career-ending scandals. Then Miss Swanson met her next love while filming a society scandal. Rod LaRocque was a French-Canadian actor who proposed marriage to her after shooting Wrapped. But he had a violent temper and was jealous of the attention she received. They soon realized that they were not romantically suited for each other and transitioned into friends. That was one of her smarter decisions when it came to her romantic life. So, we got to talk about Joseph P. Kennedy Sr. and how he got a cardinal to break up with Miss Gloria Swanson. But before we get into that, let me tell you about the time when Gloria Swanson fell in love with a French nobleman who gave her a title. So the year was 1924, and she was not yet officially divorced from her second husband, Herbert Sanborn. And she found herself yet again in love with Henry de la Falaise, I think. And he was a Marquis. Now, he was closer in age to her. And she did like his good manners and humble lifestyle. Shortly after their romance began, she found herself pregnant. And we know this was a no-no. You cannot be pregnant with one man's child while in the middle of divorcing another man, okay? You can't do that. No, 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 no. Your career will be over if you try that in Hollywood, okay? Especially in the 1920s, okay? So, she had quite the decision to make, okay? Being that she already signed the moral clause, she was concerned and asked her lawyer to speed up the divorce so she could quickly get married to Henry. But even so, it could not justify the timeline of her pregnancy. I mean, the bottom line is we all know basic math, okay? So, then there was the issue of Henry's ethnicity. So Henry was an Indian and a dark-skinned Indian man. When the public found out about their romance, they were enraged. Some had outbursts contesting their union. The couple did marry in France in a secret ceremony, and Gloria became the first Hollywood celebrity to be titled. But again, because of his Indian ethnicity, not everybody was on board with the union. She did, unfortunately, abort the baby because she just knew it would have ruined her career if she went through with the pregnancy. As a result of the abortion, she got blood poisoning or tetanus, the doctor said, and so she had to be taken to the hospital. Then there became some scandal with the public not accepting or believing Henry's titles. There was some contention around whether he really was a titled man or not. And he had to provide proof of his long line of familial royalty. He did not have wealth, nor an education in filmmaking, but he also had a military background as well. This marriage was like the others. The bliss was short-lived, okay? I mean, you see all the pictures, and Gloria Swanson is just happy, overjoyed, and clearly relishing in this moment. But the smile doesn't last long, okay? So at some point, she meets Joseph P. Kennedy Sr. in New York. And it starts out as a business arrangement. Now, again, I think this is one of those situations where he sought her out because, I mean, she was one of the biggest names in Hollywood. And maybe he figured, okay, you know, her husband isn't business savvy, so I can slide on in and do what I want and have my way. So that's what happened. She began an affair with Kennedy Sr., and he was clearly married. So they both were married with kids, and having this affair. I get the impression that she's a very sexual kind of gal, okay? And at some point, Henry, it sounds like he didn't like being in America. Maybe he was feeling a little homesick or whatever, and he wasn't up for this. He's really not into Hollywood and the glitz and the glamour and all the attention. It just wasn't his style. So they did spend a lot of time apart. And this is where Kennedy saw his way in to exploit that. I see what her intentions were. I mean, she probably was lonely and needing some attention and affection. But as far as Kennedy, how I interpreted it, it sounds like he saw this as a business opportunity. He knew Gloria Swanson was one of the biggest draws at the box office, and he took advantage of her for his financial gain. It wasn't long after that first meeting that he convinced her to dissolve her own film production company, which she had, which was unheard of in those days for a woman to have her own film production company in her name. So Kennedy convinced her to dissolve that business and start a new business under a different name. And under that business, Kennedy put everything in his name. So all the money was going to him. He was collecting everything. And he cleaned her out. Cleaned her out. Now, I don't know why she didn't see through that in the beginning. I mean, there was no reason whatsoever for her to dissolve her own business. There was no need for that. I don't know. Either way, that's what happened. And then Kennedy proved to be an incompetent film producer, okay? I mean, that's what it sounds like. I'm just going to call it what it sounds like. He wasn't good at that, okay? So after he swindled her for all her money, he just went missing, He went missing. Not only did he go MIA, he then sent Cardinal William Henry O'Connell of Boston to break up with Gloria Swanson on his behalf. Now, you can't even be surprised by this because, I mean, his behavior the entire time just reeks of poor character. So you can't even, it's not surprising. So yeah, the Cardinal lets Gloria know, this affair can't go on any longer, okay? You're both married. You'll be a disgrace to your families, to the public. You got to let this go. But Gloria said she wasn't buying it. She wanted Kennedy to tell her that himself. But obviously, he wasn't the man for the job. So that's why he sent somebody else to do it. And so, yeah, she never heard from him again. Until she reached out to him, I believe, about some business. She called him. But for quite some time, she didn't hear from him. He never officially broke up with her himself. And then, she had a couple more husbands after that. I almost forgot to mention her fourth husband, Michael Farmer, with whom she had her second daughter with. He turned out to be yet another drunk and was used to other people paying his way. He never kept a job. He did acting for a bit, but for the most part, he was a slob, an embarrassment to her, and would often hit her up for money. Really wasn't a good father to his daughter. Just, again, a complete embarrassment. Michael was also in arrears on child support for his daughter, Michelle. And he even wrote a letter to Gloria requesting that Michelle give him some money so that he could remarry. There were no ends to the begging this man would do. At this point, you could hear Gloria's frustration when she wrote back to him. So I'm going to quote here. She said, I am not going to help you financially for many reasons. You see, my obligations are to my mother and my family. You relinquished your rights as a father. Obligations go with parenthood. Now you want your child to help you. Imagine, help you finance a romance so that you can marry some unsuspecting woman. Michael, what has happened to you? Where is your soul? How can you look at yourself? Have you ever thought of honest to God work? You've been a taker, not a giver. Please help Michelle to have some respect for you. Only you can do this. I wish you well. Oh my goodness. The marriage didn't last long, obviously. They were married in 1931 and officially divorced in 1934. She had another affair with a married man after leaving Farmer. She was involved with British actor Herbert Marshall, who was married to actress Edna Best. And the married couple had one daughter. When Swanson became romantically involved with Marshall, she, I guess, believed she could convince him to leave his wife, which she did. And he ended up moving in with Swanson at her home in New York. But he always seemed to regret that decision. He never seemed quite happy when he was with Swanson. And it doesn't sound like he had any intentions of officially divorcing his wife. Then one day, Swanson, noticing how depressed he apparently was, she told him to go back to his wife and talk things over and see if this is really what you want. Do you want to be with your wife and family, or are we going to move forward and get married? So that's what he did. He went back home, and Swanson learned in the papers that he reconciled with his wife, Edna Best. And Swanson recalled in an early manuscript of her autobiography, I'm quoting, she said, I was never so convincingly and thoroughly loved as I was by Herbert Marshall. But I think the decision to return to his wife was best because Swanson did say he was starting to drink heavily, and I just think he probably was missing his family, missing his family, and also maybe feeling guilty about the fact that he abandoned his family to be with Gloria. She even was considering marrying a closeted gay man who was also a columnist. And he was one of those who would butter up to the stars. He really wanted to be in those circles. He was that kind of, he was a celebrity climber, He always wanted to be connected to a celebrity, right? His name was Brandy Brent. So they began dating around 1949, if you want to call it that. In the biography, Gloria Swanson, The Ultimate Star, it's insinuated that he was gay. He unabashedly would write about Gloria Swanson in his carousel column and always let people know that he was with her. So Gloria stunned the public when she announced her plans to wed Brent, who was now her faithful companion for social engagements and also was her personal manager. But again, Brent was a closeted homosexual. That's what was inferred, but it's not explicitly stated. Then one day, he got fired from a job he had with the Times and was desperately in need of another job, right? But then gossip columnist Dorothy Kilgallen outed Swanson's fake romance with Brent and told her readers in Voice of Broadway column that a wealthy man by the name of Louis Braden had her heart. But Braden was, of course, still married, and his wife was not granting him a divorce. Then Brent, the columnist, was arrested and jailed on a suspicion of morals charge. He was released on a $500 bail. Because it was not his first offense and impending public humiliation would ruin him, he committed suicide and was found dead in his parked car on a side road on December 22nd. The cause of death was carbon monoxide poisoning. Now again, it's never explicitly stated, but it's implied that he was a closeted gay man. And I think that had something to do with the suspicion of morals charge that led to him committing suicide. But again, this is speculation, it's not quite clear. Then Gloria married another wealthy man by the name of William Davy. She met William M. Davy in 1944. He was an investment broker, and he would not be the last William that she married. They married January 29th, 1945. Now, with this marriage, Gloria was expecting to retire early from acting, being that he was wealthy and she just figured she would be supported financially, so why keep doing this acting thing? She was getting older and ready to hang it up. What she didn't know was that Davy had an alcohol problem. Their marriage was in trouble from the very start. Now, Davy, mind you, never moved into Gloria's home. He always stayed at his apartment. When he did come over, his behavior was erratic and unpredictable. When Swanson's daughter came over, Michelle, to stay with her mom for a week, even she noticed his behavior, and the two of them started sprinkling AA pamphlets throughout the home to give him a hint to maybe get some help. Instead, he chose to leave Gloria. He basically walked out on Gloria on July 9th. She sued for separation after just 6 months of marriage. In the subsequent legal separation proceedings, the judge ordered him to pay Swanson alimony. Davy unsuccessfully filed for divorce on the grounds of mental cruelty. He died within a year, paying Swanson absolutely zero in alimony, and left the bulk of his estate to the Damon Runyon Cancer Memorial Fund. And now we arrive at her final husband, William Dufty, who was a writer who worked for many years at the New York Post. And he also was the ghostwriter of Billie Holiday's autobiography, Lady Sings the Blues. Now, those two bonded over healthy eating and an overall healthy lifestyle. But like her previous marriages, the marital bliss didn't last long. So they knew each other previously, and then they got reacquainted in 1966 and began dating shortly after. Gloria says she loved to dance, and Dufty was a marvelous dancer. He then moved in with her in her New York apartment and became her support system. He also is the one who helped her with the research and writing of her autobiography, Swanson on Swanson. She went on tour. She went on an American book tour with Dufty to promote his book Sugar Blues, which was published in April 1975. They married on his 60th birthday, February 2nd, 1976. And yeah, he knew about her numerous marriages and didn't like being given a number. So, as far as where he ranked within her husbands, he always said, "I'm your first organic husband." But again, it appears Dufty was another closeted gay man who lived his truth with his partner, Dennis Fairchild, after Miss Swanson passed away. Swanson became very obsessed with having Dufty write her autobiography. And at one point she said, "You can either have the marriage or the book." So as a wedding present, Dufty got started on writing Miss Swanson's autobiography. But then another man came into the picture, Brian Degas, a television writer, and he swooned her with his fading looks and charm. But it was more than enough, because shortly after meeting Miss Swanson, he moved into her home. It sounds like the two had an affair while Dufty was a few blocks away in another apartment working on the manuscript. She had two companions in her life at this point, and friends and family sensed that Degas had ulterior motives. He knew how to seduce her with flattery. He would talk about how he loved her paintings and sculptures, and it sounded like he became more involved in her business. But again, he had motives in mind. But Gloria Swanson didn't believe her family and friends when they tried to warn her, and she continued with the affair. even to the point that she renegotiated her contract for her autobiography. And she had it so that in May of 1980, she secretly went to the publisher and added Degas to the contract. So she insisted that 1/3 of the proceeds from the sales of the book be handed over to Degas under an agreement with her new company, Gloria's Way, Inc. With $150,000 already paid out by Random House, the new contract stated that $125,000 would be advanced to Degas upon his signature, and $225,000 would be given to Gloria upon completion of the manuscript. Now, again, Duffy is the one who allegedly is writing the manuscript. As you can see, his name ain't nowhere in this contract. So when he found out about it, the marriage was over. But he was a man of his word and completed writing her story, then walked out of the apartment and marriage in June. But Degas remained in her life. However, word did eventually get back to Swanson about the disparaging remarks Degas said about her in an interview. Actually, he was negotiating a contract for Gloria to star in a Broadway play, and he was making these remarks about the legendary actress. And the producers happened to record this conversation, and they played it back for Gloria Swanson, who was devastated. They ultimately broke up, but at this point she was still married to Duffy on paper, but that marriage clearly was over. So that brings us to the end. I mean, she passed away on April 4th, 1983, at the age of 84 in New York City. And they were still married at that time. So, yes, Duffy was her final husband. And her daughter, Michelle Farmer, said of her mother's relationships with men, she was a very feminine woman with a masculine brain. Which you kind of get what she's saying, because considering the times she lived in, Gloria was very different. She was atypical for a woman. She had her own businesses. She was successful in her career. She had some bit of wealth. But when it came to love, she just seemed to struggle. And I think because she was so career driven, I think that did intimidate her partners and husbands. And she even said, when it came to her love life, she said, I want a man who is mentally and physically stronger than I am. I would like someone to say, don't worry, and take care of me just once. Someone with whom I can have mental intercourse on any subject. I've had everything in life but that. Well, she never did get that, but she had her career and family. All right, well, we're going to wrap this up with Miss Gloria Swanson. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and let me know what you think of Miss Swanson's legacy. I mean, I know she is known for Sunset Boulevard, but she has an extensive filmography, and she was quite talented in her acting career. So there's more to her than Norma Desmond, okay? So get to know Miss Gloria Swanson. Hopefully you liked this episode. If you did, give it a like, comment, subscribe if you choose. This one was a crazy one, okay? There was so much in here. I'm probably going to have to do a part 2 with Miss Gloria Swanson. Because there was one affair that I didn't cover that led to a sort of rivalry between her and another actress by the name of Constance Bennett. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. I'll catch you in the next one. Thank you for listening and watching. Hopefully you had a good time, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.